Andrew Middleton is the founder of an organisation called I'm Not Done Yet, INDY for short. In his early years, he became a commercial corporate technologist and then went into management consultancy before finding a passion for non-profit organisations. In his mid-50s, he found himself creating a plan to maintain his income whilst using the plethora of experience and skills gained throughout his life. Andrew's father and grandfather did not retire, so he didn't really know or understand what a conventional retirement looks like up close, and quickly realised that he would need to create a strategy which was based not only on building his skill set, and thus I'm Not Done Yet was born, which is all about helping people find strategies to reinvent and enjoy their life over 50. In this episode, we will find out more about what Andrew is doing to live it up in his later life. Some things include being an extra on film sets, to officiating weddings, to mentoring other older adults.
Okay, hi Andrew, it's lovely to meet you. Let's get going. Please introduce yourself and just tell me a bit more about your journey and how you've got to where you are today.
Well, I'm Andrew Middleton. I'm the founder of a company called INDY that helps people over 55 basically live their best life. I've had a very odd journey, I think. I started off in the corporate world as a management consultant and IT consultant. And I had a moment where I suddenly thought, why am I doing this? Threw it all up, went to live in an old converted iron foundry on the banks of the River Tavy in Devon, and needed a job. And I thought, what am I going to do? And I ended up working in the charity sector, mainly in grant giving, but all sorts of things. I ended up in a national children's charity as their innovation manager. And about, I suppose, 4 or 5 years ago, I started to think, well, are there going to be any jobs for me? I was hitting my late 50s. And I set up INDY. And I also set up what has become a very strange sort of gig economy portfolio working pattern. I started to think really heavily about, what was it I wanted to do? How did I want to live my life? I read loads and loads of books. I mean, that lot there behind me are all books about retirement, aging. I was just trying to get my head around what it was. I had a little bit of a hiccup in that I didn't have any retirement role models. My father carried on doing all sorts of stuff and working well into his 80s. My grandfather was a messenger boy in his late 70s. So I didn't have anyone in my life who had conventionally retired. So I couldn't say, that's it, I'm going to wrap things up. And at the end of my 50s, I was still thinking to myself, well, I'm not done yet. And that's what became the kickoff for INDY, as we call it, I'm Not Done Yet, the company I founded. So that's kind of me.
That's brilliant. So when you reached this kind of hiccup in your life, were you approaching a point where you're like, right, I want to retire, or I want to start thinking about retirement, or you just thought, I'm going to read all these books about retirement, I don't know what I'm going to do, let's just see how it goes?
Well, to some extent, because I hadn't a role model, because none of my parents and grandparents had kind of retired, I was really thinking, well, how am I going to carry on working? I know it was kind of strange, but I kind of hit a brick wall in that I hit what I've seen other people hit and what I call the oh shit moment, where I actually started thinking, I don't think there is a career for me. I think for most people, the last big job you'll get is your sort of 56, 57. And after that, people will tell you there's no ageism in companies. But, there's a lot of, very subtle and kind of almost closet ageism. So I started to think, well, how can I carry on working? Because state pension doesn't kick in until you're sort of 66, 67 now. And that's a a long time to be without a proper job, so to speak.
It's really interesting that you kind of feel, right, I need to do something about this. And you had that oh shit moment. Did you have a kind of, from experience, did you see somebody like a loved one also experience that at the same time as you, or did you kind of recognize all these people around me, like my friends and family, are having these oh shit moments, maybe I should do something?
Well, I started seeing my friends and colleagues, people of a similar age were sort of going through it, and that's really where INDY came from. I read a lot of books, I thought about it a lot. I had my experience as a management consultant, so I'm used to structures and looking at things and analysing them. And I realised we were all kind of in the same place, and that's where INDY really came from. It was, are there some patterns? Are there some practices, some ways of being, some best practices, if you like, that actually I could adopt and potentially I could share with others?
Yeah, brilliant. And what does INDY do exactly for people that don't know what INDY is?
Okay. So INDY, predominantly, it's a community of people that help one another through this period in time. There are three things that really INDY does. It promotes the idea of an INDY identity, because when you get to a certain age, once you get past middle age, there isn't a really nice kind of tag to have. Become older, elderly, later life. They're not particularly nice things. So actually saying, well, I'm an INDY, I'm not done yet, I'm kind of in between. I'm not at the point where I'm old and elderly. I'm probably not middle-aged anymore. I'm an INDY. So part of it is about having this identity that people can grab hold of. And people find that very helpful to actually describe themselves, and find it quite motivational to think, well, I'm not done yet. I'm going to find something else to do. The second part of what I've been doing through INDY is I found it's very helpful to have role models. And I started out in our community and on the website by putting stories of people who had run marathons at 105, real big things. And people didn't really relate to that. And I then started seeking out kind of ordinary stories. And one of the best stories that we ever told was someone in their late 50s, older guy who got a little bit paunchy, a little bit flabby. And he'd done one thing. He got a personal trainer. And it changed his life. Suddenly, it wasn't just about him becoming fitter. I mean, in his mid-60s now, he cycles and he enters triathlon. But it really changed his whole life, his relationships. People saw him in different ways. So telling these role models, like people, I call them people like us, telling their stories is really powerful. And then the third thing is trying to find tools, approaches, tactics that can help people. And I've developed a bit of a methodology that helps people sort of walk through from, dare I say, oh shit moment, to actually having a bit of a plan and thinking I can do that. A lot of it is about change and transition. But some of it is really thinking, can I think in a different way, and what's really practical for me? So those are the three things that I've been doing.
That's brilliant. So I guess it's very mindset focused. And I think over time, what we've found is that the society drills in these ideas that as soon as you reach a certain age, like retirement, that's it. You can travel, or you can sit on the sofa and watch TV all day, or you could just do leisurely activities. Yeah. But a lot of people don't want to do those things, or don't have the means to do those things. So finding a job is a great idea in a sense that it gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you a social life. Yeah. It also provides you with a financial security, which is a huge part of that aspect of retiring. So I guess, do you follow that strategy that you implement through INDY yourself?
I followed the complete strategy. In fact, that's how I developed it. I was the guinea pig for all this, and my friends. And I was very lucky. A good friend of mine actually turned around to me one day and said, if you really want to make this work and discover what makes people tick and how to do this, go out there and work with people. And probably over the last 2 or 3 years, I've worked with 250, 300 people, different points. And, you know, some people have been very generous and paid me for my time. Others I've just helped. Some have been quite long periods of time. Others, you know, it's just been a conversation. But I've learned an awful lot in the real world, you know, with these fantastic guinea pigs. And as I say, our community now, we've got a whole bunch of people. We all help one another, and we put articles up there. You know, it's kind of self-help for the over 50s.
Yeah, brilliant. And how, if we were to go back, let's say 25 years, and you and I said to you, right, Andrew, I want you to outline in a few sentences what you think your life is going to be like after 60. And so I want you to do that scenario, and then I want you to do the realistic scenario of what that looks like.
I think that for a lot of us, we've got this real belief that suddenly the clock chimes and we're at that point where we retire, and off we go into retirement, and perhaps we're playing golf and eating out the pub, and we don't think about it too much. The reality of what I found is most people don't think about this until their mid-50s. You know, there's almost a pattern to it that people think, you know, I'm still young, you know, they don't think about things like pension and health and, you know, all of these things that really come into play. And then somewhere in that mid-50s, you get to what I call the dangerous decade, mid-50s to mid-60s. It's where everything changes. You're kind of forced to really think, you know, you're going to come out the other end of it as a different member of society. You may choose to retire, but then again, you know, in our community, we've got people in their mid to late 70s who are still working. And I've got examples of people still working in their 80s and 90s. We've got people doing all sorts of wonderful stuff, but it's that transition, and it's kind of those dangerous decade years. You know, for some people, it doesn't work well because they're so set in their ways, you know, that they say, you know, I'm going to be an accountant, I've got to have an accountancy job, and they send out thousands of CVs, and it just doesn't work because the world is a very different place now, and there is this kind of covert ageism. For others, they sort of throw everything up in the air, and it all comes down in a very different place. And, you know, suddenly this kind of classic retire when your pension kicks in doesn't really come into play. You know, you can be different. And it also, you know, once you start thinking finances, you think, who am I going to be? What am I going to be? You know, it kind of leads you into other things like, will I have the health to do this? You know, what am I actually going to do? You know, all these other questions. So and they're the indies. They're the I'm not done yet. You know, some people will get through this and they will be sitting at home watching daytime television, and that's right for them. But there are others, you know, who I've met out there. Yeah. You know, and to me, you know, kind of having gone through this period of reflection and building INDY, you know, actually that's what I want. You know, I want to feel that you know, particularly when you get to a certain age, feelings of mortality and knowing that actually you don't know how long you've got. You know, I do want to squeeze as much out of that and have as much fun and enjoy it as much as possible.
Absolutely. So when before that, let's say that 25 years ago, would you say that you would have thought you're just going to work until you're about 75 and then see what happens?
Well,
and then talk to me about your life now. Like, what are you doing day to day? Any exciting job opportunities?
I don't think, you know, back in the days when I was a corporate consultant, I don't think I even thought that far. I thought it would never come, so I didn't think that far. Now I'm very lucky. I have a very strange portfolio, digital kind of work life. I've got INDY, which is, you know, I do some mentoring and coaching. Really bizarrely, during COVID, I went down a whole line I wasn't expecting to go down, in that I suddenly started working with a couple of people who said, we really don't know what to do. And I brought in my management consultancy expertise. And I've ended up with sort of a kind of a guerrilla marketing background, using social media and kind of tech tools, really. I didn't expect to do that. So that's kind of the second stream with Indy. And then as part of Indy, it was one of my friends actually turned around to me one day and challenged me, said there just aren't any interesting jobs out there for the over 60s. So I set out to challenge that, and I found a good number of them. But he said, well, it's all right talking about them, but can you actually get them? Which is a challenge. So I went out and got them. So now at weekends, I'm a part-time wedding registrar. So I just pop out occasionally and marry people. And I'm a film extra as well. So occasionally I'll have a day on a film set, which is interesting, and I'm sort of man walking past church, to put it mildly. I'm not at the top of the star list.
The credits.
I'm sometimes probably not on the credits, but
Oh, it's brilliant. And I guess alongside all of those job opportunities come experiences, and it also massively expands your comfort zone, and challenges you mentally, maybe physically, to do all of these things, which I think is super important for keeping your mind stimulated, keeping you mobile when it comes to just living healthy life when you reach your 90s, your 100s, and you're promoting that longevity by doing all of these things and not kind of monging out to TV on a daily basis.
And we know a lot of the research out there these days seems to suggest that you might have more chance of going down the sort of vascular dementia or Alzheimer's if you don't stay stimulated. And I think most of us who get into our 60s and 70s realize, our steps become very important, our mobility becomes very important, because we're doing this stuff and maybe our body's pushing back a little bit. So, little changes I've made, like I've got a standing desk. I'm not using it at this moment, but the actually thinking, and really interestingly for me, because I suppose I'm operating in a new world scenario for me. This is not the environment that I worked in 30 or 40 years ago. I've learned an awful lot from people far younger than myself. I mean, it's a fabulous resource pool. I mean, some people refer to me as a sort of 60-year-old millennial, because actually, we may sort of look down and say, oh, that's millennial behavior, but a lot of it's really sensible. And I've kind of picked up some of that. So, as I think I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to become a digital nomad so that I can travel and work from anywhere.
I think that's fantastic, and I love the 60-year-old millennial. I think that's great. It's a great social media name. If that was something that you were ever interested in, but I think that's super inspiring, especially when it comes to people who are going through a transitional phase of maybe they're retiring, or maybe they just want to change in their later life or in their midlife as well, because you do get to that your 50s often and think, oh my gosh, I'm 50, what have I done? So I really, really appreciate you sharing all of that. So if you could give 5 top tips for making that lifestyle transition, what would they be?
Well, the first one will be, only you can do it. It's so easy to dream about making a change, but you actually have to get out there and do it and take some action. So that would be my number one. Number 2 would be, take quite a broad look. I have a concept I call having your platform. You get to a certain point in your life, and everything that's happened has built you a platform. And that platform includes things like the finances you have, your health, the mindset you have, your relationships and friends. And they all support you. And I think you need to be very careful about almost auditing that and looking after that, because that's what will lift you up. I think the third thing is make sure you learn what really ticks the boxes for you, what your passions are. I think in Japan they would call it kaizen, not kaizen, ikigai, which is your life purpose. Because I think if you try and do something you're not passionate about, you're not going to do it. It's going to be boring to you. So really look for that ikigai, that thing that I think the fourth thing is really look widely, and don't be afraid to ask for help from anyone, even if they might not be like you. You've probably got something to learn. And the last one, the fifth thing, is you don't have to follow the herd. You know, this is your life. You can do what you want. You can build it how you want. And initially, when I first started out, I didn't expect to be a social media toting, wedding officiating, film extra type older person champion. But that seems to be how it is, and it works. I can earn money at it. You know, I've got a reasonable income, and it's fun to do. So don't be consigned to just, you know, what society will have you do. Does that sound all right as a 5?
Absolutely. And I think that that's fantastic, especially the don't follow the herd. I think that's brilliant, because the majority of the UK are sedentary, especially in later life. And whether that's a societal thing, whether that's a generational thing, there's research to be done. But not following the herd will really make you optimize your later years and the last 25 years of your life, because it will give you those life experience. And also, as we said, I mean, you've come across extremely knowledgeable, not on just aging and what you're doing here, but just you have such a broad approach to the way you want to live, which is I think is one of the key factors for being healthy and living a healthy life. And I can often see that when it comes to it, mindset is the biggest barrier to achieving what you want to do.
Yes.
And if you don't have that open mindset, you'll never be able to do things or live the way you want to live, or enjoy life, really, because you'll always have that kind of demon saying, oh, that's just too risky. No one else is doing it, or everyone else is doing this, and let's just do what the rest of the herd are doing.
But 10 years ago, I would have followed the herd. I would have gone out there and got, you know, I've had to learn this for myself.
Yeah.
And it's the realization, and now I'm heading towards my mid-60s. You know, I've got, if I do follow the herd, I don't think I will have as enjoyable a life. You know, I have a bit of a hoot now, really do, you know, in terms of what I can do. And I work with all sorts of people and do all sorts of things, and I can allow myself to do that.
And you come across extremely happy and positive. So, and obviously I've only been talking to you what for 40 minutes. So like, and just to be able to tell that you seem like such a happy person, I think is just great. And really inspiring as well for somebody like me who wants to enter my 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s and 100s with such a positive attitude still for living and for doing things and learning things. I can see, and from what you said, you love to read. Are there any books that you'd really recommend for anybody who is contemplating having a bit of a shift in lifestyle?
Oh, that is so difficult. I'm going to have to turn around. I mean, they all have different things. Yes. I'm going to have to walk away from the bookshelf. There is the reserve section over here.
No, you do you. I've put you on the spot, so.
Okay. I'll probably start fishing books down. The New Long Life, by Andrew J. Scott and Linda Grattan, These guys are at the LSA in London, and they've really broken down a lot of the trends that are happening. And it's a bit of a read. I'm not saying this is not a light bit of holiday reading, but it's really comprehensive. I quite like A Company of One by Paul Jarvis, which is all the tendencies. If you had a big job in the past or worked for a big company, you want to create that big company. And what A Company One is all about is why staying small is the next big thing for business. And it's about creating and tailoring something to your lifestyle. Really, things should come in threes. So I ought to turn around and just see, is there a third? Oh dear, this is getting complex. I always like to go back to The Blue Zone by Dan Bettner.
Okay.
Basically, what he did was he went out there and analysed why people are living longer and happier in various cultures, and he found a whole bunch of patterns that existed across the world. So from people in Japan to Sicily to the US, and what makes what's the kind of recipe for a long life, a long happy life. So that how's that? Is that a good?
Yeah, that's great, and great books as well. I think there's such a diverse range of books there to read that can really inspire you in different ways. And I think a lot of the people that listen to the podcast are in a position where they want to do something different or live their life in a different way, to just live happier and live healthier and live longer. So they're fantastic, because I think reading is a great way to spend your time, but also to just challenge your mindset around things and your expectations. But yeah, I think firstly I want to say thank you so much for coming and talking to me. And before we close up on the conversation, is there anything you'd like to add?
Anything? Well, it's your life, live it. Yeah, I'm not done yet. I hope people out there aren't either.
Perfect. Love it. And if we want to find out more about INDY or yourself, how is the best way for people to contact you?
Well, if they looked at I'm not done yet .org, that's the link into our community. And we've got a whole bunch of people, and you can join for free. There's no problem there. Or alternatively, you can look at I'm not done yet .uk, which is our website.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I look forward to kind of following you, and I hope that you can stay in touch and let us know about how
I'd love to. Well,
exciting life goes.
Well, I found that the most interesting opportunities come from collaboration and working with people.
Absolutely. It's all about collaboration and networking.
It is, definitely.